Let's talk about the fundamentals of product management. So, what exactly is the role of the product manager? Well, it helps when we think about what the world looks like when there aren't any product managers. So, really, in the world, there are three core groups. They're users, businesses, and makers. So, users are people who have some set of pains, and sometimes they know what these pains are, sometimes they don't. But what ties all users together is that they're willing to invest time and money to getting these pains solved. The second group is businesses. The core objective of a business is to, of course, stay in business. But what does that really mean? Well, what they're trying to do is they're trying to earn money because that way they can keep people employed and provide offerings to users while also making sure that they create shareholder value. When you invest in a business, whether you're someone who's buying shares on the stock market, everyone wants to see businesses grow. And so businesses need to make sure that they're not just earning money, but they're earning more and more money over time. And finally, there are the makers. They're the people who are actually creating the products. And so makers include both designers and engineers. What makers want to do is they want to build things that are cool, things that they're really excited about, passionate about, but not just create new things. They also need to make sure that they maintain all of the old things and that they don't cause the platform to break. So, an example, as an engineer, you wouldn't want to build a product that winds up causing the rest of your platform to crash. And as a designer, you don't want to create a whole new flow that then looks totally different from the rest of the product because then it's visually jarring. And so makers are in this interesting spot where they're trying to create new things, but also make sure that they fit in with all of the previous things that they've shipped and is something that they can maintain over time. The challenging thing with this structure is that these three groups are in conflict all of the time. So users and businesses are in a lot of struggle because what users want is they want businesses to deliver other kinds of products that will solve their needs. And many times the things that they want aren't things that the business really wants to go do. But on the flip side, many times businesses already have some set of products and they want to sell them to users, but users are saying, I don't need those. I don't want those, right? And so there's some sort of mismatch between users and businesses where users try to push businesses to build things that maybe don't align with what the business wants. On the flip side, businesses are trying to sell things that maybe users don't want. And so there's a lot of conflict that can happen there. There's also a lot of conflict between users and makers. So many times users will try to tell makers exactly what to do, even though it might not make sense for that particular platform. So as an example, say that a user says something like this: I need you to put a blue button on the upper left-hand corner that surfaces a pop-up if you mouse over it, and if you click on it, then it's going to skip to the next screen and automatically input all of this information. And that doesn't really make sense, right? From a design perspective, right? Maybe that just doesn't fit in with the rest of the design philosophy. As an engineer, maybe you just can't build that without doing a lot of rework, without breaking a lot of test cases, without causing a lot of issues to the code base. And so users are very particular about how they'd like the product to look. And so that can cause a lot of trouble when users are trying to dictate to makers that they want things a specific way. But on the flip side, makers can also create a lot of challenges for users because many times makers will find something that they're really excited about, whether it's chatbots or predictive models or augmented reality or blockchain. And they're really, really excited about this technology. They really want to go make it happen, but then they build it and then users don't really need it because it doesn't solve any of their pains, right? It's, oh, well, you built this, that's nice, but I didn't really need that. And so then that can also create a lot of conflict where users feel that, hey, the makers aren't solving my needs. On the flip side, makers are saying, well, users are giving us requests that are kind of unreasonable. They don't make sense with our platform. And finally, makers and businesses are also in conflict all of the time, specifically around development velocity. As you can imagine, businesses want makers to build as many features and as many products as possible because the more the business has, the more that they can sell. And that way they can get more users and grow the business faster. And so they're saying, hey, makers, give us more features faster with the same number of people. And that's really, really challenging. On the other hand, designers and engineers don't want to go that fast. In fact, they want to make sure that the entire platform makes sense. So many times design will say, actually, we should go take a moment to look back at all the different things that we've already built, and we should redesign them so that way they all fit together holistically. Or engineers might say, actually, we're not going to build any new features. What we want to do is we want to refactor the entire platform so that way it's more scalable, more robust, so that we can do more in the future. Or engineers might say, actually, we need to add a lot more automated test cases so that way we don't accidentally break the product with anything that we release next time. And of course, redesigning things, rebuilding things, all of this takes time and doesn't create more features for the business. And so then the business gets very frustrated that the makers are, quote unquote, dragging their feet. So as you can see, in this world where there are no product managers, these three groups are fighting all of the time. And that's incredibly painful. How does anyone get on like this? Well, here's the great thing. The product is the thing that solves the pain of all three groups. So what is a product exactly? Well, it's a set of functionality that actually solves the user's pain and is something that they're willing to pay for. And then by paying for it, businesses can stay in business, can keep people employed. And this product is also something that makers are really excited, not just to build for the first time, but also to maintain over the long run. And so that's what a product is. A product solves the pain of all three groups by being something that is scalable, robust, works for the business, the makers, and the user. As you can imagine, if a product only solved the pain of two of these groups and not all three groups, then it wouldn't work. Say that a product met user needs and business needs, but couldn't be built by the makers or was really difficult for the makers to maintain, well, then that's not a very successful product. Or say that users and makers think that it's really, really cool, but from a business perspective, it doesn't earn any money. It can't earn any money. It's just not structured that way. Well, that's also not a successful product. Remember, products need to solve the pain for users so that way businesses can earn money and engineers and designers can build it and maintain it over time. So that's what a product is. Well, it stands to reason then that product managers are the folks who filled the space between these three groups, users, businesses, and makers, to drive scalable and strategic impact through building products. In other words, product managers are trying to understand the pain points, priorities, constraints, needs, fears of users, makers, and the business so that way they can build a product that solves the needs of all three of them at the same time. One of the most fun things about product management is trying to work through all of these different constraints and to try to find a solution that will work for everyone. You'd be surprised. By having more constraints, you can actually wind up being a lot more creative. You can deliver things that are a lot more innovative and provide a lot more real value to people. I do also want to call out that because product managers are fundamentally filling the white space, that means that no two product managers are alike because they're all working with different constellations of users, businesses, and makers. So a product manager is going to be different from company to company in terms of the kinds of responsibilities that they have or the skill sets that they need because they're fundamentally working with different kinds of users and businesses and makers. And in fact, even within the same company, product managers can be super different between each other, right? Because they might be working with totally different users and totally different makers. As an example, a product manager who's responsible for user-facing mobile apps is going to have a totally different set of skills and responsibilities versus a product manager who's responsible for an internal operations team's facing product. They've got totally different pain points and totally different charters to go after, and so it makes sense that these product managers are different. So, as we work through our course material together, keep in mind that while there are best practices that apply in general to all product managers, the specific implementation of your day-to-day product work is going to be very different between product manager to product manager. So great, we now have a strong understanding of the theory of product management. What is the point of product and who are we serving? But what does product management actually look like day to day? What does that actually mean when we're working on the job? Well, first, what I can tell you is that product management can really be split into three core kinds of responsibilities: meetings, execution, and strategy. Product managers are responsible for meetings because they're working with other human beings, whether those human beings are users or business stakeholders or makers. And something just to keep in mind is that human beings are fundamentally social creatures. They want to see another person. They want to work alongside them face to face. And so meetings are one of the most powerful ways to come to a decision and to drive alignment across all of the participants. Whether your company is big or small, remote or in person, you will definitely have meetings as a product manager because that's still one of the best ways to drive decisions and alignment. Then outside of meetings, you're going to be tackling execution, which really just means doing the day-to-day things that are required to ship your product, right? To get it built and to get it out into the market, and then to maintain that product to make sure that's continuing to work appropriately. So things that fall into the execution bucket include writing up specs, taking notes, running data analyses, all the things that are really necessary to keep your product moving forward on a day-to-day basis. Then there's strategic work. So as product managers, we're not just responsible for the day-to-day. We're not just responsible for releasing the product next week or in 2 weeks. We're actually responsible for the long-term vision, the long-term strategy of the product. What should the product look like in 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years, 5 years from now? And so these are called roadmaps. Basically, what is the direction in which we're taking the product and what are the different steps that we're going to take to get there? We're also responsible for pricing. How are we going to monetize the product? Because again, we need to remember if the product doesn't earn money for the company, or if it doesn't enable other products to earn money, then it's not valuable. Products need to earn their worth or else businesses can't stay in business. And so we need to determine how exactly we're going to price this product. And of course, products are always competing within a competitive landscape. There will always be other competitors out there. So we also need to understand, well, who else is playing in this space? Who are the different competitors that we're up against? And what are their strengths, their weaknesses? What are our strengths, our weaknesses? And how do we make sure that we position ourselves so that we're unique and others want to come to us instead of the competition? So now we understand the three core kinds of responsibilities that product managers have. But that doesn't address my previous question, what does a typical day look like? Well, as much as I'd love to give you a specific percentage of meetings versus execution versus strategy, I wish I could tell you, oh, it's 30% meetings, 50% execution, 20% strategy. It's not. The thing is, product managers don't have standard day-to-days because we're inherently filling the white space. And so that means that we're going to have different priorities on a day-to-day basis because we're serving the differing needs of users, businesses, and makers. That's one of the fun things about product management is that every single day looks really different. You might be working a lot with engineers and designers one day, working a lot with customers the next day, working with legal and compliance the day after that, working with marketing the day after that. And so you get a lot of variety as a product manager. And some days are just going to be filled with meetings, and that's just one of the realities of the job. Other days, you're just going to be fully focused on strategy. You're going to be diving deep into industry reports to understand where's the industry going and how are you going to position the product appropriately. Other times, you're just going to be putting your head down and just working through lots of analyses and lots of specs. And so every single day is different because you are the one who's deciding what that day is going to look like. You get to decide what the priorities are, and then you're going to go act off of them. And so one of the most fun things about being a product manager is that you get to dictate your day. You're the one who's in charge of identifying whether you need to move forward on the user front or on the business front or on the maker front. And you're going to be juggling different tasks across a wide range of priorities. Great, so now we know that there's no standard day for a product manager. Every day is going to be different because we are fundamentally filling the white space, and the white space changes on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to do the things that are highest priority. Okay, makes sense. But which departments do we work with? Are you working with senior folks? Are we working with junior folks? Who are we interfacing with? Well, the short answer is you're going to work with everyone. The interesting thing about product management is that you're actually everyone's peer and equal, irrespective of title or rank or department. And that's actually kind of cool, although it can also be kind of scary. What do I mean by you're going to be a peer to everyone? Well, let's say that you're working with a design intern. The design intern doesn't report to you. You don't get to tell them what to do or what not to do. You only get to influence their actions, even though they may have a lot fewer years of experience than you do. But that's just how it works. They're your equal and you're their equal. And so you need to treat them as an equal and as a subject matter expert in design. Because as a product manager, your job is just to set the priorities. Your job isn't to come up with the designs. That's the design intern's job. On the flip side, you might actually be interfacing with the head of design. And in that scenario, you're also their peer and equal. Even though you're so much more junior to them, that doesn't matter because you're the one who understands the product the most. And so you're going to be dictating the direction of the product, and they need to work with you in terms of identifying how to make sure that the design team can move forward with your product priorities. So irrespective of rank, your job is always to bring the other party up to speed and then help make sure that they succeed, right? You're there to help them set the right priorities and to make sure that they have the right context to do the right thing for the business and for the user. And this expectation applies across all departments, whether you're working with designers or engineers or salespeople or marketers. No matter who it is that you're working with, you're going to be treating them as a peer and equal, and you should expect that they're going to treat you as a peer and equal too. And so don't be surprised and don't be afraid about working alongside leaders and executives. You might actually be working alongside the CEO to launch a new product. You might be working alongside the head of sales to identify how to position your totally new product. You might be sitting down with the SVP of marketing to identify how to track the success of your product versus all of the other products that your company has. I personally think that it's really fun working alongside both individual contributor engineers, as well as engineering interns, engineering managers, directors of engineering, the head of engineering. I think that that's really cool and really fun because you get to see all of these different priorities and all of these different decision-making mindsets. And I think that's just really, really fun in terms of being a product manager. Great. So in this lecture, we've learned what the fundamental structure of product management is, that we're fundamentally filling in the white space between users, businesses, and makers to build a product that solves the pain for all three. We know what our responsibilities look like, and we know the different kinds of people that we work with. And so now that we have this knowledge, next up, we're going to be talking about the product management career ladder.